What is your name, sir?
Alfred Sheffield.
Mr. Sheffield, how old are you?
I'm 66. Well, I started out in Progress Village in 1960. I was 9 years old, and it was our first house that we knew of. And about that time, Progress Village had been conceived and they were building it, and my parents, we all went out one day and looked at houses and ended up buying one. So we moved into the house in January 1960. I was very excited about it, and my sister was very excited. My brother was a bit, he was a bit anxious. I remember the first night in our new house, it was pitch black in that neighborhood because there were no street lights. And my brother was very afraid. It took him a while to get used to it, but I thought it was just the greatest thing since sliced bread. Today's houses are not built on big lots. In fact, they're built so close together now, so it was a lot of land. And my parents just never realized anything like that. So they set out to make the house a home, and it was tremendous. I was the kid that was always wondering what was on the other side of the hill. So I was, in no time, I was away from the house and exploring the neighborhood as a 9-year-old. I was always a wanderer. I always wanted to see what was to be seen. As a matter of fact, I was talking with my neighbor in the back this morning. He was also one of the first families to move into the neighborhood, and so we always flash on the fact that, well, we're still here. Although I did not spend all of the 57 years here in Tampa. I stayed in Tampa until 1969, graduated from Brandon High, almost immediately enlisted in the Navy, and I spent 4.5 years in the Navy, was in the Vietnam War. I ended up in California, a place I always wanted to live, and then I spent the next 40 years in California, in Northern California.
You came back. I
came back in 2009, October. My mother contracted Alzheimer's, and so I moved back in 2009 to take care of her.
To your childhood home?
To my childhood home, which I'm living in now. And I took care of her for 5 years. She died, and now I have the house. Tampa was segregated as I was growing up as a child, which is a very interesting time. I guess I sort of understood it, but maybe not as an adult. But I learned early on as a child living in Tampa that there were certain restrictions that were on me that was not on people that were not black. Like, I remember as a kid growing up that there were, if you walked into a business establishment and there were water fountains for colored people, because we were not black, then we were colored, and then there were water fountains for white people. And I always wondered, what does the water taste like in the white water fountain? And so when I looked around and when no one was looking, I ran up to the fountain and I grabbed a big gulp of water out of the white water fountain, and then I ran. And then I swallowed it, and it just tasted like water. And so I told my mother, I said, it tastes the same. And she says, well, yes, it does. 1966 comes around, and they were going to integrate the schools. I was very excited about that. That was going to be another new experience. There was racial tension, and it was just part of that social learning experience, and that we were all going through it. The black kids are going through it, the white kids are going through it. Progress Village started out as an all-black community. And it was pretty much that way for all of my first 17, well, it was age 17 when I left. It was always black. Over the years, then a lot of the blacks started moving out of Progress Village and moving to Claremont City. I've always been one to be very open-minded about people in general, and my parents raised us that way. My parents were never of the racist mindset. My mother was a domestic worker. She always worked for wealthy white people in Tampa and Hyde Park, which in those days when we were kids, that was pretty much a standard with most black women. It was more than just a black and white experience. We knew that family so well, their kids, and they knew my family, our family so well, and not like just a clear line between black and white. It was more like two families that were coexisting together. You know, people are people. They're good people, they're bad people, and they raised us that way, to treat people as you want to be treated. And that always stuck with me, and that's always been my approach to life. My dad was always well employed, but most of the families in Progress Village, the new families that had moved into the village, people in those days had good jobs, good basic jobs where they could earn an income, that they could pay the mortgage on low-cost housing. These houses, as well as they are built, and they are very well-built houses, far better than what you get in a new house these days, were very inexpensive, relatively inexpensive. Not only were families able to pay for their homes that they were living in, but they were able to maintain them and have very nice yards. And so Progress Village at one time was just all very nice, modest homes on well-manicured lots. You know, they kept up their yards, and it was great. It was a very good sense of community, and it was that sense of accomplishment that families were given this opportunity with very nice homes in an area where they could raise their kids with a certain quality of life that all families should enjoy. However, through the years, as time progresses and the country goes through many gyrations of ups and downs, of economic lows and economic highs, a lot of families fell on the wayside, losing jobs. Unions became non-existent. My dad was a Teamster, hardcore Teamster. The village, the neighborhood took a hit in that it became depressed, doesn't look nearly as nice as it looked many years ago when we first moved into the village. It's kind of sad to see that because it really was a great community at one time, but just leaves something a bit to be desired now. I take care of my house and I maintain the yard because that was my mother's passion, was a nice looking yard, and you always maintain your house.
What hopes do you have for Progress Village in the future?
You know, I have no idea. I'd like to see it as a community that will come back someday. What I have noticed, though, it's interesting, is that more white people are moving into Progress Village. Something I never thought would happen in my lifetime, but I'm seeing that more and more. I think that's a great thing. I think it's a great thing for any number of reasons. One, why shouldn't we coexist as a community of people, no matter who we are or where we're from? And two, I think it can only help the community economically, whereas you get an influx of people bringing in different values and different ways of living. I think it's great.